Tonight, live from the campus of Fairmont State University, Metro News brings together the two leading candidates for governor in West Virginia, Patrick Morrisey and Steve Williams. Hoppy Kercheval will host the roundtable discussion. Tonight's event is presented by Fairmont State University, AARP West Virginia, your ally for real possibilities in the Mountain State, and by Greer Industries.
At Greer Industries, we make the roads you drive on safer with skid-resistant asphalt. We make the water you drink cleaner with our abundant supply of hydrated lime. We entertain and inform through all types of media. And we designed one of the world's most recognized golf courses. We're Greer Industries, a family-owned company with over 110 years of commitment to making your life better.
We vote to protect the Social Security we worked hard for. We vote because family caregivers deserve support. We vote to have a say in our future. For all the reasons why, AARP has information about when, where, and how to vote. Find the information you need to make your voice heard.
Fairmont State is thrilled to be hosting tonight's gubernatorial debate. Thank you to both candidates for being here and civilly discussing important political issues that will help determine the future of the state of West Virginia. And thanks to you, the voter, for showing up with an open mind and fully engaging these issues that will make sure you're ready to go when you enter the voting booth. Thank you and enjoy the debate.
Good evening, and welcome to our forum with the two leading gubernatorial candidates in West Virginia, Democrat Steve Williams, who's the mayor of Huntington, and Republican Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. I'm your moderator, Hoppy Kercheval from Metro News, and we're coming to you tonight from Fairmont State University, thanks to the folks at Fairmont State who've been wonderful hosts. We'll do our best this evening to explore the issues important to West Virginians and provide a clearer picture of where each candidate stands, and my questions are designed to elicit specific answers. Now, we're not following a traditional debate format with dedicated time limits. It's more of a forum or a roundtable. And by agreement of the candidates, I have the latitude to seek clarification from them, and also the ability to, in some instances, allow for a limited response or rebuttal if necessary. But we only have an hour, a little less than an hour, so we'll try to cover a lot of ground. The two candidates will have 2 minutes each at the conclusion of the forum to make closing statements. With that, please welcome Patrick Morrisey. Patrick, good evening. Welcome.
Good to see you, Hoppy. It's great to be here.
Good to have you here. And Steve Williams. Hi, Steve.
Hoppy, thank you.
Welcome in.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. West Virginia, everybody knows everybody. We're going to go by first names tonight, okay? Patrick, I'm going to start with you. Mayor Williams has called for a direct vote of the citizens on constitutional amendments to legalize recreational cannabis and to enshrine reproductive rights, abortion rights, in the state constitution. Do you support or oppose those proposals by Steve?
A couple things. So first of all, I want to start off by thanking everyone at Fairmont State. This is incredible, and it just shows kind of the institutions that we have here in West Virginia. So it's great to be with you here tonight, Steve, to get down into some of these issues. So I would start and say that in 2018, there was a referendum on the ballot with respect to abortion. That was a very important vote. It was hotly contested. It was heavily debated. And I think that the people of the state made a firm decision on that. Thereafter, our legislature stepped up and they wrote a law. We're actually defending that law right now in court, to this day. And so I would say that there has been a public referendum on that. And now the legislature, the representatives of the people, are speaking. With respect to cannabis, I would say this. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. West Virginia now is a medical cannabis state. There's a lot of research that needs to be done to evaluate all the pros and the cons and the effects on the human body with respect to cannabis. I've always advocated for doing research before you make big decisions. So I think at a minimum, we need to do that before we get to the process of legalizing recreational pot. I think that's the better, firmer approach. But I would also say this. The biggest issue that we have to focus on from a drug perspective is the fentanyl menace. That's actually where we have the most amount of bodies that are passing by every year. We have more death from fentanyl and from drugs. That has to take the focus of the next governor, and that's going to be a huge priority of mine when I'm elected governor.
And we're going to get to that. We have questions on that this evening. Steve, back to you. So, as Patrick pointed out, the people's representatives have passed a law limiting abortions to very rare circumstances. And as Patrick said, in 2018, voters passed a constitutional amendment that read, "Nothing in this Constitution secures or protects a right to an abortion or requires abortion funding." So why should there be a redo?
First and foremost, on this particular issue with abortion, Dobbs came after this constitutional amendment that was passed a couple of years ago. But more importantly than anything else, what we've seen is freedom's on the ballot. Freedom is on the ballot. I trust women to make their own decisions. My opponent doesn't trust women to be able to make these decisions. And frankly, for the state legislature to be making these decisions, I think what we're starting to see in West Virginia and elsewhere around the country is that we're at a point where we're starting to see this slippery slope that is occurring as a result of this, because there are women that are losing their health care options that are available to them when doctors are fearful of actually being able to make decisions to save a woman's life and places their license in jeopardy. Frankly, that's why I think, yes, we should have it on the ballot. And I think then what's once again on the ballot is simply saying we trust women to make their own decisions.
Patrick, Stevens said you don't trust women to make their own decisions.
Look, I think there was a big referendum on this in 2018. I remember it very well. I think both sides articulated their positions very clearly, and there was a very robust debate for the people, and they made a decision. It's not often that the Constitution is amended in West Virginia, and so 2018 was that big vote. I think people knew the stakes of what was coming down the pike. I'd also note this, when it comes to the question of abortion, our legislature has gone through this. We've rejected some of the approach that other states have had, which would allow abortion literally up to birth. That's a very radical policy. So our legislature has been pushing back against those radical policies. I think they passed a common sense law that's being defended right now. Let's make sure we work through the court system, we get a result. There's no reason to come up with another referendum again.
Let me continue on this theme. Stephen, I want to go back to you. West Virginia's Unborn Child Protection Act includes a legislative finding that the state has, quote unquote, a legitimate interest in protecting unborn lives. The law, however, specifically includes in vitro fertilization among the procedures not considered abortion. In vitro fertilization is not considered abortion. Many efforts at in vitro fertilization produce embryos that are not implanted, and they wind up being destroyed, discarded, and left frozen. Do you believe West Virginia law should consider any restrictions on in vitro fertilization? And Patrick, I'll get your response to it.
Absolutely not. This goes back to 1990. When I was in the legislature, I think it was Webster versus Reproductive Services out of the state of Missouri going before the Supreme Court. And at that point, they were saying that legislators can vote on placing some restrictions. There was a woman who headed the nursing program at Marshall, went to my church, actually was in a Sunday school class that I taught. I had a great level of respect. And she came in and said to me very specifically, this was 34 years ago, said to me, Steve, if you start taking these steps, it becomes a slippery slope. And the slippery slope could lead to the elimination of in vitro fertilization. And now we're seeing it occurring on the national basis, and that's the very reason. I just don't see that the state has any interest in coming in and interfering in the reproductive choices that women and their partner are going to make.
Patrick, do you consider in vitro fertilization embryos, do you consider them life? And should West Virginia have restrictions on in vitro fertilization?
I think in West Virginia, there's strong support for IVF. And in fact, I stand with President Trump, and I've talked to him and his team a number of times because I think he gets it right. First of all, West Virginia is an amazing place, and we want to have as many babies as possible. I don't think there are many members of the legislature who would want to get rid of IVF. I think the president has talked very clearly about that. I stand with him on that, and there's nothing in the current law that's going to put that at risk. And I know because we have to defend the laws that go into the court. So I don't think this is an issue in West Virginia. I think that if you're a couple and you're looking for IVF, you're going to continue to have that opportunity, as you should here in West Virginia.
Patrick, the population of most of our counties continue to shrink, not all but most, and we've seen wave after wave of school consolidations. Meanwhile, maintaining the funding necessary to operate a thorough and efficient school system as required by the Constitution is an ongoing issue. Do you believe West Virginia needs 55 separate county school systems? Would you support any school county consolidation plans?
Look, one of the things that I plan to do when I become governor is do an audit and review of literally every agency and every program. And I think we need to look at the cost structure of how much everything costs, the performance of all of the agencies that are operating under the state, to look at ways we can become more efficient and become more politically accountable. Interestingly, I supported the constitutional amendment several years ago to ensure that a lot of the education decisions ultimately get ratified by the legislature. I think that's important because the legislature controls the power of the purse. But I would begin on day one with an audit of all of the state agencies to try to get to the bottom of how we can find efficiencies. Hoppy, one thing that I knew happened during COVID is that there were a lot of people that were working pretty hard, a lot of state workers that are working pretty hard. I also know that I think we can find efficiencies because 55 counties, there's got to be a way to save money.
Save money within those counties or by consolidating those school systems?
I think we can certainly find ways to reduce some of the bloated bureaucracies that exist and share services and do things much better. I think that's critical because one of the things that West Virginia needs to do, it needs to be thinking about how it's repurposing government into the future because we're spending more per person on state government than virtually any state in the nation. And so we owe it to the taxpayers in order to return more money back to them, to engage in a thorough review, to make sure that they're getting the best value for the dollars that are being spent on program. But you're right, Hoppy, there is a need for a thorough and efficient education. And if you can get rid of some of the bureaucratic waste, then I think we can do that more effectively. We could pay teachers more. I think teachers deserve a pay raise. And we're going to do that by competing better with the states that we touch to make sure that we're more competitive.
And we're going to get to pay raises. So do you believe, Stephen, do you believe that there are efficiencies to be found in education? Do you believe one of those efficiencies could be the consolidation of county school systems?
What I prefer is regionalization, but also maintaining the counties. The reality is we could save an awful lot of money if, I said it earlier, freedom's on the ballot. Give some freedom to the local school boards to be able to make some decisions. So many decisions now are being made out of Charleston. Frankly, I think that's the quintessential example of the arrogance that everything has to be decided in Charleston. Give the local governments, give the county boards the ability to be able to make some decisions, but also create regional compacts where there can be a consolidation of administrative duties and such along those lines. I think that's just a matter of getting people around the table and talking about this. Now, the reality is we're going to have in local political genre, there are individuals that are wanting to protect their own turf. I understand that. But the reality is, I think we have the opportunity, giving decisions at the more local level, and then create regional compacts to be able to help from an administrative standpoint.
I did. I think one of the things that we have to do as a principle is that we need to question all the expenditures that are occurring within the state, and we need to get to the right point because I think even the mayor would agree with this. We're moving to a place with our state budget, which is going to become much more challenging for the state's next governor. And so I think we have to go through and evaluate different ways that we can find more efficiencies. One of the things that's come up recently, and a big thing I'm an advocate for, is to advance Hope Scholarship, because I think that's a way that we could move faster in terms of driving educational attainment. That could make a big difference across West Virginia, allow us to start measuring the improvement we're seeing through the Hope Scholarship, through the school choice programs. And as we're doing all that, we're gonna have to do the analysis financially of how we're spending money and do it in the best way for taxpayers, for our kids. That's our future.
School choice is coming up too.
Hoppy, there's a couple of things that he's saying here that's not, that he's referring to it, repurposing government. He said publicly right-sizing government, going with the Hope Scholarships, as well as choice in schools. All of this rings to me as code for privatization. Money is going into Hope Scholarships that are now, many people are using it outside of the state of West Virginia. So how in the world do we actually control things along those lines? What I'm hearing him say, it sounds reasonable on the front, but then I start hearing him start to talk about.
Let's go there. Let's go there, because it's on the question. Let's go there, and that is, so do you believe then that the furthering school choice in West Virginia is a bad thing, and B, undermines the public school system? I think that's what we're talking about. Then I'll get to Patrick. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it depends on how the school choice is being made. If the school choice is saying we're sending our public dollars over into private schools, then how are we able to control what those public dollars are going? I have concerns with that. School choice of individuals, as we were talking earlier, being able to say, well, I want to go to school at another place, that creates a level of competition in school choice within the public sphere.
Okay, so we do have a difference of opinion here, and you are a leading advocate of school choice, but you have a difference here with Steve.
I think we do, and there are a couple things. The reason why I'm a passionate advocate for school choice is that, Hoppy, being 48, 49, 50 is unacceptable anymore. We have to make the changes that are needed. And the reason why I'm so optimistic with respect to providing young families with the ability to make the decision to choose a school that works well for their kids is because that's going to be what is the driver to help drive quality within not only the private schools, but the public schools as well. One of the things I'm hopeful to do, if I get the opportunity to serve as governor, is begin to sit down with all of the folks who are running a lot of these schools and talk to them about the metrics, the STEM metrics, English and math and science, and look for ways that we can improve. And the reason why that's so important is because if you are thinking of moving to West Virginia, and population's a big, big problem, we have to have the best education system. The quickest way we do that is by having the Hope Scholarship be very broad. I want it to be the broadest in the country so we can start to show the metrics are improving, and then the public schools are going to be in a robust competition to follow, and we're going to help make sure we fix the public schools as well. That's very important, but we have to make progress right away.
So expand Hope Scholarship, that is state dollars going to the private schools, and that's what you object to?
Yes, absolutely. The issue is that what we will end up finding is that only the wealthy are going to be going to the Hope Scholarships and schools. And
that's not true.
Wait, we'll finish your thought.
Everything points to that. Now, I understand that there are having Hope Scholarships where they might be able to be used for a very specific purpose that the child needs. I understand that, but what I've observed is that this is ginned up for the most wealthy within our communities, and then find ourselves where they're families that have more difficulty aren't going to have
So,
the
all right, quick
ability
response,
to
and
make
I wanna
that
move on.
decision.
Quick response.
So that's not true for a couple different reasons. One, because this is a universal application. So if you're wealthy today, you can go to the school of your choice. There's no barrier if you have money. This is actually really helping out a lot of the low-income students who are going to get choice. They're going to have the ability to work in an environment, learn in an environment with teachers that they're very comfortable with. And I think that makes a huge difference. So I can tell you, Hoppy, the families I've talked to who have benefited from the Hope Scholarship, my office successfully defended the challenge to the Hope Scholarship, and the families are encouraged to live in West Virginia. There are more people who want to move into our state because we are going to have a very broad system. Fixing the education system is so critical to attracting more population.
Do you think our public schools are failing?
I think we need to enhance all the results from all the
But
public
you would
schools.
not use the word failing.
Well, we're 48, 49,
Do you think we're
50. We
failing?
need to do much better.
I don't think we're failing, but there are things that we can do, and we have to provide resources to make sure that they have an assurance that they can succeed.
I want to talk about PEIA, medical and drug expenses outpacing the money available. PEIA is proposing significant premium increases and additional out-of-pocket costs, Steve, for the coming fiscal year. So if you're governor, do you have a fix for PEIA? Is there such a thing? Or would you propose a pay raise to help those teachers, staff, and public employees pay for the increase?
This is one thing that I had to work with in Huntington. We had problems with our health care plan. We had problems with our pension plan. And there is no easy path there. The bottom line is with PEIA, we have to make sure that it's funded properly. Presently, the way the structure is that I believe that those who are advocating to continue on want to privatize. Everything that I'm seeing that's being said by my opponent is that they're going to be looking at privatizing PEIA or the insurance system with those insurance companies or those insurance companies that he worked with over the years in his previous practices.
Well, okay, wait a minute. I want to get to that, but let me be clear. So, but whoever's next governor faces an immediate issue of the increases in premiums and out-of-pocket costs. So do you have a solution to that, or is that just they're going to have to live with it? Or would you propose a pay raise, and if so, how much to help them cover those costs?
I'm not looking to create a pay raise. I'm looking for a permanent fix, because the pay raises that have been provided have just been pay raises just to be able to cover it, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves a couple of years down the line that we have to fix it.
But what's the permanent fix? I'm sorry, but what's the
permanent fix is funded properly, making sure that it's funded properly, and it hasn't been funded properly. And when they start to look at privatization, about 20% goes into administrative. Right now, it's about 6 to 8% is in the administrative costs. The reality is, teachers didn't go into teaching to become rich, but they sure didn't go into teaching to go into the poorhouse. And the way that PEIA is being run right now is that, and continuing to put it on the back of teachers and public employees, is pushing them towards the poorhouse.
Patrick, let's go to you. So do you have a fix for PEIA or a pay raise to offset PEIA increases?
So let's step back for a minute. Hoppy, if we were having this conversation 3 weeks ago, no one would be talking about PEIA because it's new news. I don't want to speak for the mayor, but I think we all were reading in real time what was happening. And this was foreseeable because the issue has not been addressed the right way over a number of years. But I think as you started to see data come out, what you're hearing is this. They're wrestling with the high cost of prescription drugs. Medical costs are going through the roof. And one of the things we need to do is we need to be even more aggressive in terms of the rebates from the drug companies. We can do that. Separately, we need more competition overall within our healthcare system in West Virginia. One of the problems that we're seeing in our state right now is we're feeling the effects of Obamacare, of what happened for a long period of time. And so a lot of the providers have been hurting a long time, but a lot of these costs our PEIA is expected to absorb. That's a very real problem. Here's what I think we need to do. we need to step back for a minute and we need to think about who's being impacted by these PEI changes. And I start with the people on fixed incomes. There are a lot of state retirees who benefit from PEIA, and these are people that are going to really struggle because they don't have the ability to make it up through the pay raise,
so
right?
What is your solution?
So I think we have to do what I mentioned before, do a close review and audit. There will be 6 meetings coming up in November where PEI is going to be taking input from all across the state. I would urge the public, everyone listening, to go to those meetings, to weigh in, to provide ideas, but we have to have a long-term fix to PEIA. But keep in mind that those on fixed incomes do constitute a lot of the PEIA cost. And I think we have to worry about that. The seniors who served us so much, I talk to these people. People need to look out for seniors and those who really are struggling here in West Virginia.
Well, on that, and that's a good point about the retirees, and they say that they are on fixed incomes, the public employee retirees. They haven't gotten a raise in who knows how many years. So I guess I want to ask you both, again, I'm not pushing for a pay raise, but public employees, when teachers went to the Capitol a couple of years ago, it was over PEIA. They may, who knows, do that again. So do you think that teachers and public employees and staff need and should have, or would you propose a pay raise for them to try to offset the cost if you don't have some other solution to the PEI issue?
Yeah, so I'm going to address that question directly. I've always been an advocate of teachers, and in fact, one of the things I've talked a lot about during this campaign is to make sure that West Virginia is competing much more effectively with all the states that we touch. That's critical because we touch a lot of states who end up coming in and stealing our teachers. You know, if you're listening in Jefferson or Berkeley County, I know of teachers who have moved because Loudoun County's paying them $30,000 more. If you're in Montagalea County, you might get people that are going to run across the line. They're going to get more money. So what we need to do is we need to compete more effectively. And certainly teachers and first responders and our law enforcement need to compete to make sure that we're able to retain those folks.
Well,
I think that's really important.
Let me interrupt. Would you, if you're governor, at your first state of the state, first budget, propose a pay raise for public employees?
I would propose a pay raise to make sure that we're competing better with all the states that we touch because we cannot afford to bleed personnel to other states.
So you would
I'm also
propose
going
a
to
pay
be.
raise?
I'm saying I would propose to make sure that our state workers are paid fairly, but we have to do the analysis looking at other states so we're competitive. Everything, Hoppy, you're going to see under a Morrissey administration is to compete better and stronger with all the states that we touch. So if there's a state that is cleaning our clock, eating our lunch in terms of cost or pay, then of course we have to be more competitive. And that's how I'm going to look at that, including pay raises.
Steve, would you propose a pay raise? If so, how much?
I don't know how much. I would propose that we have to increase compensation. He says he's an advocate for teachers. Listen, there are teachers that are watching this right now, Patrick, that are just squealing out loud because all they remember is when they had the strike that you were threatening to have them fired or even putting into prison and it just arresting them for. So this saying that you're an advocate for teachers, at least it doesn't wash very well with the teachers. But what I would do with PEIA when I'd come in on my State of the State address, I would say we are going to fund it at this to make sure that we can get through the year, and we're going to sit down. This is what I did in Huntington. I put a broad perspective of individuals around the table, not just healthcare people, individuals who understood insurance and such, and we sat down and we hashed out and saved our healthcare plan by doing that. But you get brilliant people around the table, and it's amazing the innovation that you can
Because of what you said, I do want to give you just a quick response to that.
I think, Hoppy, it's very important. The mayor talked about education, and I think it's critical that the most important thing we need to do, we want to treat our teachers very, very well. We also have to look out for our kids. And I view the challenge of the next 4 years is what can we do to actually encourage kids to have hope in West Virginia's future. The best way to do that is to actually set a high bar where we're measuring statistics, where we can start to grow in those educational rankings. And one of the ways you do that is you actually have good teachers. You look at alternatives to make sure you have the best teachers around. Because if we're going to fix our workforce participation problem, and our population issue. And if we're going to attract more people to our state, we're actually going to have to pay competitively in terms of teachers, and we're going to have to make sure that the kids have hope, because a lot of kids have left West Virginia. Hoppy, I'm going to finish on this note. Every year, I go down to Boys State and Girls State, and I go down and I ask two questions. I ask how many people here in this room, these are some of the best and brightest kids we have, want to go to college. Virtually everyone raises their hands. Then I ask the second question, how many people here think that there'll be a good job available for them when they're done? 20% of the kids raise their hands. We have to change that so there's hope with the kids, and that means we're investing in education and have the best and brightest teachers.
The way that you end up doing that is you make sure that you're not just competing with those states around us, is that we're looking to make sure that we're setting standards that the rest of the nation is seeking to follow, that we want to make sure that what we're doing is that we have the platinum level of education for our children, absolutely. But doing that, we've got to make sure that they have the resources within the schools to be able to do these very things that we aspire to do.
All right, let me go to another topic here. The current administration and the legislature, Steve, have described a goal of eliminating the state income tax. Do you believe West Virginia should do that? And if so, what would be your time frame?
Do it if you have a plan. I'm the only one who has cut taxes, and we've cut them significantly in my city. But we did it and had a plan and a strategy in place to assure that the way that we would do it would actually create other economic opportunities within our economy. As a result of that, Huntington, in one of our banks just went through our state recently, said Huntington is the only population center in the state that is employment and business activity that is beyond what was pre-COVID. We did that by eliminating taxes within our, so yes, if I have an opportunity to be able to go in and eliminate the income tax, fine, I'd do that, but I don't see a plan in place. It feels very much to me like this is saying, we want to do this, and by God, we're going to find a way to be able to do it regardless. We need to have a plan and a strategy in place.
Patrick, okay, the same questions to you, and that is, and you said, I've heard you say that you also want to eliminate the state income tax, but how fast do you want to do that?
So I do have a plan, and here's how it goes. On day one of a Morrissey administration, we're actually going to lay down every single tax that West Virginia currently has. You lay it out so the public can see, and you're going to compare it with every single state that we touch. And then the first order is to actually try to take steps to start to defeat the other states economically, to have superior tax policy. So the immediate goal is going to be having a state income tax that's actually superior, lower than all the states that we touch. That's actually paramount to begin to see the migration of people coming in. The second step is when President Trump is elected, and he's going to get elected, I'm convinced that. I also want to note I'm the only candidate running for governor endorsed by President Trump. I'm looking forward to sitting down with them and building on our energy industry here in the state to create new opportunities for revenue, to merge natural gas and coal with technology, because that will provide the additional resources to cut the income tax even further. There is a plan on taxation, also on regulation, on licensing, on workforce rules, to do a comparison beginning on day one with all the states that we touch, so we can have the freer, economically superior policies, and that's how West Virginia is going to shine.
Do you anticipate, when you start, you say you have a plan and you're going to look at all the numbers, do you anticipate, if you are the governor, that first year to propose another reduction in income tax rates?
I do anticipate we're going to go further, but we're going to make sure that we're going to pay for it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to audit all the agencies. We're going to look at it. You know what happened, Hoppy? Just a couple of weeks ago, the legislature made a change. The one thing I was asking for is go deeper on taxes. I want us to be lower than all the states that we touch.
You opposed.
But you have to, because you have to pay for it. You can't just say, well, the next governor is going to figure it out. You actually have to do it. So I think that the next governor should be armed with audits and close reviews to save money, because I believe that the current spending in West Virginia, we can find the resources we need. The other thing is, through economic growth, I think if we bring our energy resources together And when President Trump wins and we stop all this nonsense from Biden and Harris on our energy resources, we're going to be able to grow that sector of the economy, providing additional resources which will fuel the ability to diversify our economy and lower our income tax.
Let me talk about foster care. Steve, the foster care system is struggling to keep up. About 6,000, 7,000 children in the system. Recruiting foster care families is a challenge. Some children are shipped out of state. Other older children are housed in hotels. The legislature last increased the reimbursement for foster families in 2020. Should the state raise the reimbursement rate to those families, or do you have another solution to what is admittedly a foster care crisis in West Virginia?
We definitely need to raise the reimbursement for foster care. The problem that we have, as you said, some are staying in hotels, some are staying on college campuses, some are staying in cabins and in state parks. This has to be addressed. We were talking about the children in education and everything. Goodness gracious, these children are it's criminal what is happening to them, and that's a strong. I'm not saying put somebody in jail about it, but the reality is these are the most marginalized children that we have, and we have to do something to be able to. One way is through reimbursement, but when you have an supposed $800 million surplus, surely to goodness we should be able to have the resources to be able to do this. This is why I'm concerned with the previous question of going in and immediately reducing taxes. I think we're in the same ballpark when we're saying that we need to analyze the direction that we're going to go and make sure that we have a plan in place before we do something. But there are real issues that we have to address, and we have to have the resources to be able to do that. And that's why we have to be real careful about going in and eliminating or cutting taxes.
So if there's a surplus, you'd want to put more toward foster care as opposed to cutting taxes?
Well, we've got foster care, we have PEIA, we have education, we have public education, higher education, we have broadband that we have to pay for, we have water systems that we have to build. The thing is, when I was looking at eliminating our taxes, I wanted to make sure that I was still providing services. And we ended up increasing our budget by 1/3 just simply by making the economy grow, and then we got the resources as a result of that.
Patrick, how would you fix foster care?
A couple things. First of all, our kids are our most precious resource, and all of us grieve when we read the stories of what's happened to our kids. We live in West Virginia. We should be proud, and we should take care of our kids in the best possible manner. I think we'd reach agreement on that. And so there have been challenges for a number of years. I know the legislature has been slowly trying to address some of those changes, but I think that this is an area that's really going to benefit from a lot of the auditing, the performance reviews, and I think Steve would agree with this, to be able to find the right people. This is such an important area, and the people who work in CPS and foster care, these people are some of the most dedicated state workers you're ever going to find. I know in the Attorney General's office, because we have DHHR and lawyers, they're some of the lowest paid people. We don't control that.
So pay them more?
You actually have to be competitive. We have to have the right people and make sure that the kids are being looked out for. So I want to make sure we're taking care of the kids. There are a lot of important ways that we do that. I think we can find a lot more efficiencies than some of the things you hear about, and I'm eager to do that performance review and audit. That's going to be the kind of discipline you're going to see from a Morrissey administration.
You've talked about finding efficiencies in government. Let's just go there. So, look, you've been in government 12 years. Yeah. You're mayor of Huntington, and all due respect, a lot of government leaders talk about finding efficiencies.
Yeah.
Where do you think they are? I'm not saying they're not there.
Right.
But where do you think they are?
Well, I think that, Hoppy, has there been an audit or a review of a lot of these agencies? The answer is no. I know when I came in, we did a pretty comprehensive review, and we ended up saving money. We returned over $50 million back to the state general fund. We've generated revenue of a couple billion, especially when you factor in the opioid settlements. We've done a lot to return money back to the people, to the taxpayers, and also we've saved our state agencies tremendous amount of money. So being the Attorney General of the state, we know that there are a lot of challenges. Now, the one thing I would say is, moving from the Attorney General position to the governor position, all of these issues are going to have a different set of eyes. So I'm going to take all of the information, the experience, the knowledge that you learn from the AG's office and apply it to the chief executive position. And I do think we can save significant dollars. But the other key, Hoppy, I mentioned this earlier, we're going to have to grow economically. And the way we do that, we can't say no to being more competitive on the tax side. We have to be aggressive on taxes. We have to be aggressive on regulations. We have to be aggressive on licensing and workforce rules so that our economy starts to soar even more. We're making some progress, but we still have to continue to put more gas in.
Steve, he's mentioned having an audit several times now. We have a state auditor. I'd be leaning on the state auditor's office, but everything that he's saying is that we're going to come in and be analyzing these things. That tells me there's on-the-job training that's occurring. Is that you're coming in? You know, Patrick, you've been there for 12 years, and you've been the state's attorney for all of these different agencies. The reality is that. When you've been running an operation, you know how to go in and immediately start acting on it.
And that's why I'll be ready on day one, yeah.
Well, frankly, as I see it, I'm the only one who has actually run an operation as the chief executive. Yes, it's a city, but the difference between the city and the state is nothing but zeros. I mean, the fundamentals are still the same, and you bring people together and you find ways to be able to address this.
Who would be, then let's ask, I'll ask each of you this, is why would you, this is a macro question, you're both talking about efficiencies in running government, and Patrick, I'll ask you and go to Steve. Why do you think you'd be a better chief executive of running this state than Steve?
I think for a lot of different reasons. I'm not a tax
the big one.
Well, I'm not a tax and spend liberal, right? So I'm looking at different ways to manage it, to put the taxpayers first. My values are about looking after the Constitution. I believe in limited government to make sure that when you have savings, you return as much of it to the people as possible. That's the mindset that you have going in. Second, I would say this. The experience that I bring to bear as the state attorney general, I think will allow me to hit day one in a way that it wouldn't allow a mayor of a city to come in for this reason. As the state attorney general, I've had to put broad coalitions together to get really big things done. And I'll give two specific examples. Number one, we've put broad-based coalitions together with other states when we're suing Biden and Obama. We've won big cases at the Supreme Court to protect our energy jobs. That takes a lot of work. 25, 27 states, all working, maybe 150 parties. Separately, when we had to tackle the drug epidemic, we had to work with every single county. It was the Attorney General that had to get consensus with all 55 counties, with about 225 of the 229 counties, including Huntington. And I actually want to applaud Steve because he supported the structure that we put together. But that kind of leadership is essential, and that's what I bring to bear that, quite frankly, my opponent doesn't have.
All right, so are you saying Steve, as the mayor of Huntington, does not have the executive experience to be the executive of this state?
I think that my experience and my values put me in a position to be able to do so much more, because if you look at our records, there's really no comparison. We get really big things done on the core things that matter. To protect our jobs, to fight the terrible drug plague. And the other thing which is important for the next governor, I want someone who's going to be able to work with President Trump, because we're going to have to work closely with our partners in the federal government, because there's a lot of bad stuff coming in from Biden and Harris right now. I'll be in a much better position to work with them, with all due respect, than the mayor.
Steve, he says you don't have the experience. That's my summary.
There are mayors all over the state of West Virginia that will say otherwise, and if you want to look at what somebody is going to do, look at what they've done. I took a city that was sitting at a position of the most obese, most unhealthy, most drug-addicted city in the nation, and now we're identified as the top 100 cities in which to live, top 50 cities in which to retire, the 17th best run city in the nation, and also in the top 100 safest cities in the nation. The fact of the matter is we are made up of 55 counties and countless communities. I said at the very outset, I believe in making sure that you enable local governments to be able to run things. All decisions don't have to come out of Charleston.
Steve, you have charged that Patrick is directly responsible for the opioid crisis in West Virginia. I'm going to read something you said on a post on social media. Quote, Patrick Morrissey is responsible for this. This is the same big pharma lobbyist who made a sweetheart deal with the pharmaceutical industry. Those are your words. Please explain how you are specifically tying Patrick to the flood of painkillers into West Virginia that started the opioid crisis, because that's what you're doing.
From the year 2007 to 2012, there was 780 million opioid pills dropped on the state of West Virginia. This was before he was Attorney General, 2007 to 2012. He was representing the pharmaceutical industry at that time.
But not opioids, as you know.
Okay, you're going to respond.
But,
okay, yeah.
But you had that one organization of pharmacies that he was repping, and as well as the opioid or the manufacturers of drugs. When I look at the position that he was in the swamp in Washington, D.C., and in that position, frankly, as I see it, he was in the position that he was one of those that we were suing. That I'm not saying you were one of those we're suing, but you were, but you were representing some of those same companies that we ended up suing. And then when I hear those companies saying we're going to send money to the pillbillies, frankly, as I started looking at more at this, I got angry, because in the number of deaths that we've had in the last 12 years is I think it's well over 12,000 individuals that are dying.
Patrick, he blames you.
You know, I think that the fact that he's not even answering the question, as well, he's going to try to link it in to someone else, even though he knows that we weren't involved in any of the issues. But I'd like to focus on something else. Well, no, you know that. But here's what you do know. A couple years ago, we put together an abatement structure for all 55 counties that earned the support of every county, of virtually every municipality. It passed unanimously through the legislature. It was signed into law by the governor. Over $1 billion in gross monies. I think the mayor knows that even though Huntington and Cabell did not prevail, did the Attorney General not look out for Cabell County and Huntington? We did. We didn't play politics there. The other thing, and I want to thank you for that, because you came to the press conference and you did, and I'm going to thank you for that. But the other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is why it's important.
We have another candidate. It's a moth. The Mothman has come in. But go ahead, Patrick.
So at that press conference, the mayor was very favorable and said, and I quote, and we'll make this available, the Attorney General elected by the people is our partner. We trust him. We thank you for all the work that you've done and for your hard work referencing the opioid epidemic. Before we got into a political campaign, quite frankly, Steve was incredibly complimentary, because he knows of the hard work we've put in to not only fight the drug epidemic, but that we've created a bipartisan structure that you support that actually is going to be essential to tackle the fentanyl menace, which arises because of all that terrible product that starts in China. The raw ingredients go to Mexico, they get finished by the Mexican drug cartels, and they come all the way up here to West Virginia. And you supported all of those efforts, and I applaud you for that. But now we're in an election year, so you're going to hear different rhetoric. I want to make sure that we're going to build on that success in fighting the drug epidemic, because fentanyl is a huge problem. That's one of the reasons I'm excited to work with President Trump, because I want to classify fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. I think that's important. It's a terrible menace. Too many people are dying, and I want to make sure that those numbers change.
Time is short. I got a couple more questions to get in, and we're also being chased out of by a moth, so we're going to deal with that as well. Patrick, a question on the ballot this election is whether West Virginia should amend the Constitution to explicitly prohibit physician-assisted suicide, which is already illegal in West Virginia. But are you for or against that amendment?
I'm for that amendment, and I think that we should protect our most vulnerable from physician-assisted suicide. I recognize that it's not on the books right now, but what that means is the Constitution is a further protection. So we're going further. So I'm going to vote yes on that amendment.
Steve?
No.
Because?
One, it's already law. Secondly, it has even a provision in there relating to capital punishment. This is going into far-reaching detail that I just don't think we need to. Once again, as I have said a few times, freedom's on the ballot here, and when someone is facing health decisions with their physician, it's their business. It's not 134 members of the legislature and a governor having any need to intervene with those individuals.
Along the same lines, current West Virginia law, Steve, allows only for medical exemptions for school immunizations, okay? The legislature passed a bill earlier this year that would have dramatically broadened that to religious exemption. Supporters say the bill was a matter of parental choice. Opponents say it would open up children to diseases like measles and polio. Governor Justice vetoed that bill, but it's likely to come up again in the next legislative session. When it does, and if you're governor, would you sign or veto the bill to broaden the school immunization exclusion?
I would veto the bill. The immunization program that has been in place for all of these decades has worked well within public health and within our communities. And once again, I think this is just overreach in a legislature that is saying that the government that governs best is the governor that governs at the local level, but they're getting into everybody's business, and it's none of their business.
Patrick, what would you do?
So one of the strongest parts of our Constitution is the ability of families and citizens to freely practice the religion of their choice. I think that's essential. It's a core aspect of the First Amendment. So West Virginia right now is an outlier with respect to that. It's not recognizing, at minimum, a religious exception. I think that's a problem. You've heard during the debate tonight, I've talked a lot about being competitive with all the states that we touch. I think that most of the states in the union, other than maybe 5 or so, actually have a religious exception. I think that's common sense. It shows respect for the First Amendment, and I would make sure that that provision changes when I'm governor. So I respect the First Amendment, and I'm going to make sure I carry that out as governor.
Patrick, we have an older population. West Virginia's home to approximately 250,000 unpaid family caregivers. Some states offer tax credits or grants to families providing in-home care to older parents, spouses, and other loved ones to live independently. Would you support or oppose some sort of tax credit or grant or benefit for families who are providing that care? Do you have a position on that?
Yeah, so I think you're referencing some of the proposals that have been out there, state and federal. Some have been tied to the child care issues as well. And I think that West Virginia, number one, we need to watch what's going on the federal side. I think President Trump and J.D. Vance have talked about the child tax credit. But I always have believed that one of the ways that we can help people in our state, and especially help our kids, is that we have a lot of families and a lot of people that are in churches and in other institutions who are eager to pitch in and help. And in those circumstances, we should take a look at that, what happens. But I also think that if you're looking specific on the child care side, what's happening in terms of the employer side, that employers, if they want to compete, are going to be providing those types of benefits. But here's the difference I think you're going to find between Steve and myself on this. What I've found through my study on a lot of the child care issues is that the regulatory costs are actually very, very high. And we have to look at ways to make sure that we're not paying through the nose, because at the end of the day, what people look at is what percentage of your income is going to pay for childcare. It obviously has to be a small number. I want to make sure that we have a wide range of people that could provide care, either to help our kids or separately to help our loved ones, but we can do it in a way that doesn't break the bank.
Steve, do you have any specific idea about a grant or a tax credit or something for families who are caring for older folks?
I'd be looking at all the above on that, a tax credit as well as grants. Very specifically, what I'd be looking at is how we're able to enable those businesses to be able to move forward. And if the businesses don't, then we need to look very seriously at providing it ourselves. Frankly, I'm a bit concerned about going that direction because I'm not so sure that we would be the most efficient arbiter of providing that. But child credits, as well as tax credits and grants, absolutely.
All right. Well, gentlemen, the time goes by quickly. Really good exchange. We are going to give each of you 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Did a coin flip beforehand. Patrick won the coin flip. He's going to go second. Steve, you're going to go first. And take 2 minutes. Talk about your candidacy, whatever you'd like to say. Then we'll go to Patrick. So 2 minutes, if you will, please.
Once again, Patrick, it's good being with you. Thanks so much, Hoppy, and Fairmont State University for allowing us to be able to come together. It's a shame that we haven't been together more like this, but we're down to a week. My mission is not necessarily to be governor. My mission is what I have been saying since I became mayor 12 years ago, is that my mission is to see that we transform our communities, that we transform our state. I think being governor is the one way to be able to make sure that we can accomplish this. Yes, my opponent and I have a lot of differences. One thing that I think that we can agree on is that West Virginia can be much better than what it is right now. The reality is that we're operating in a global market. Where I part company with my friend here is that I'm not just talking about the backyard brawls. I'm saying that we've got to be able to compete on the other side of the country. We do that by making sure that that we're fighting the opioid epidemic. This was something that came into Huntington and was devastating to us. And the reality is that what he did before he came into office enabled that to occur. And frankly, what we have to be able to do is know that this is something that we will not allow to occur ever again. Secondly, I do believe that a woman's right to choose is the sacrosanct. I trust women. I trust women with being able to make those decisions. And lastly is that we've got to create an economy that creates opportunity for our children to be able to come into the state, stay in the state, and they have an opportunity to be able to do this. My name's Steve Williams. I'm the Democratic nominee for governor and appreciate your support.
Thank you, Steve. Patrick, 2 minutes.
I want to thank Hoppy. I want to thank you, Mayor, for participating tonight. I thought we had a good civil exchange, and I think that debate is so central to the success of our wonderful experiment, our republic. I do want to serve as your governor, and I want to serve as your governor because I want every West Virginian to know that freedom is going to reign in West Virginia. We're going to uphold the rule of law. We're going to fight to lift up your standard of living, drive your educational attainment. We're going to do all of that while we maintain West Virginia conservative values. We're at a critical point in our country's future. There's a lot of talk about the presidential race. I'm scared about Kamala Harris as the prospects of her being president. That's why I'm all in for Donald Trump, and I'm fortunate that he's endorsed me in this race. But I want to work with our next president to have big things happen to West Virginia. I look out and I see the potential of robust competition, making sure that our taxes are going to compete much better with all the states that we touch, that we're known for our aggressive approach to have fewer regulatory burdens. We could be thought of from a regulatory perspective the way Delaware is thought of from an incorporation perspective. It's going to be very powerful. And we're going to have to tackle the tough problems that haven't been addressed. We're going to be able to do all that while West Virginia remains just an incredible place to live, to work, and to raise a family. West Virginians are some of the most special people on the face of the earth. Many of you know I wasn't born in West Virginia. I'm fond of saying I got here as quick as I could, but I had the good fortune to spend a little bit of time when I was growing up in a family where we had to work pretty hard for what happened. I was the first in my extended family to graduate from college and to make it to law school, and I feel honored that I was able to have some of the same experiences. I feel West Virginians' pain, and I want to make sure I remember that every single day. And if you honor me with your vote, I will serve you with distinction. Thank you, West Virginia, and God bless.
Thank you, Patrick. Gentlemen, thank you this evening. Very nice job. We appreciate both of you being here, and best of luck to both of you. To all West Virginians, thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you to Fairmont State University for hosting our event. We appreciate their hospitality. Thank you, AARP West Virginia. Thank you, Greer Industries, for your support. So for everybody here at Metro News, I'm Hoppy Kercheval. Good night, everyone.
The proceeding has been an exclusive presentation of Metro News. Copyright